So in the last video, we graphed quadratic functions just based on transformations. So if you see this is a quadratic function because it has x, and if you covered this 4 up, it would be x to the second. So that looks like a parabola. So you know that this pushes that left 4, and this is down 3 based on the transformations. So if you have a function that's a parabola, so your f of it, your parent graph would be this. That would be here. But if I go left 4, the vertex would go left 4 and then down 3. So that would shift left 4 and down 3. So that would be your function of this one right here. So what that literally means is that your function f of x, here it become x plus 4 to the second, and I moved it down 3. What happens when you simplify this mathematically? Meaning, what does x plus 4 squared actually mean? It actually means x plus 4 times x plus 4, and then minus 3. So if I do that, you can see that, let me erase this right here. You can see that x plus 4 times x plus 4 minus 3. You FOIL this, so you would do x times x and x times 4, and that would give you these two. And then 4 times x and 4 times 4 would give you these two. And then the minus 3 would drop down. These would go together to give you 8, and this would go together to give you 13. Now this right here is equivalent to the x plus 4 squared minus 3. So if that one graphed as this, excuse me, it doesn't turn down. But if that one graphed as left 4 and down 3 and it opened up, then this one also has to look like this. So how do we graph these things? How do we find the vertex? And how do we know that this graphs the same way as this? There's a couple of steps. Graphing quadratics in standard form. F of x equals ax to the second plus bx plus c. A, b, and c are numbers, and a can equal 0. To find the vertex, you do the opposite of the vertex would be an x, y ordered pair. To find the vertex, you would do the opposite of the b value, which would be in front of the x, over 2 times the a value, which is in front of x squared. And then f of that means take that x value and put it in for x for the function and solve for y. Then you determine if it opens up or down. And if a is positive, it opens up. If a is negative, it opens down. To find the y-intercept, you put 0 in for x and solve for y. You would have an ordered pair that looks like this. And to find the x-intercept or intercepts, you would plug 0 in for y and solve for x, which would be a number, comma, 0. And then you would sketch it. And so let's do an example. What if I ask you to graph this? So go back, pause the video if you need to, but write all of these steps down so you can refer back to them. But the first thing I would do is I would specify what's a, b, and c. So a would equal 1 because it's the number in front of x squared. The b would equal negative 4, and the c would equal negative 21. Okay. First thing you do is find the vertex. So to find that, it's negative b over 2a, comma, f of negative b over 2a. So the x-coordinate is negative b over 2a. Plug those in. Negative and b is negative 4. So negative, negative 4. 2 times 1. This would be positive 4 divided by 2, which is 2. That's the x-coordinate. So you found this one. How do you find the y-coordinate? You take the 2 and you plug it in the function. So instead of negative b over 2a, it's actually 2. So you'd find f of 2 which would be 2 squared minus 4 times 2 minus 21. And that's 4 minus 8 minus 21. And that would be negative 25, because negative 4 minus 21 is negative 25. So your vertex is 2, negative 25. So you can visualize that as 2, negative 25 somewhere here. Okay. Now, second step is to determine if it opens up or down. If you look back at your notes, if the A is positive, it's opened up. If A is negative, it's opened down. So this is opening up. Because A is 1, that's positive. So it opens up. So the parabola would look like this. And you know that that would be the parabola. Just a very rough sketch. 3 says to find the Y-intercept. And you can read back in your notes, it says put 0 in for X. So what that means is put 0 in for every X that you see and solve. So 0 minus 21 equals negative 21. So the Y-intercept is, you've got to put 0 for X, you've got negative 21 for Y. So 0, negative 21. Alright, and number 4 is to find the X-intercepts by plugging 0 in for Y and solving for X. Now you might recall in your previous math classes that if you have two X terms, meaning the X squared and the X term, you do not add the 21, because when you've got two terms, you got to keep them set equal to 0. Now, you have to either factor or quadratic formula, whichever one you want to use. I'll show you both ways here. So factoring doesn't always work. Factoring means what two binomials multiply together to give me this. To get x squared, I'd have x and x. And to get negative 21, I'd have to multiply 3 and 7 or 1 and 21. But those things also, when I put them in position, x times that and x times that number would have to give me negative 4 when it goes together. So if you watch the previous videos on factoring, you should know that those two would work there. When you get here, remember to set each binomial equal to 0 and solve. So what this says is you've got two X-intercepts. I put 0 for Y, and I solve for X, and I've got two numbers. So negative 3, 0, and 7, 0. So negative 3 and 7, this would be negative 3, 0, and this would be 7, 0. And that's how you would do that. Now, you can also do the quadratic formula with this. Same process. You still set it equal to 0. You still keep all the terms over here. Except you do x equals, when it's set equal to 0, you can do x equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So x equals negative b, which is negative 4, plus or minus the negative 4 squared, minus 4 times the 1 times the c, all over 2 times 1. Okay? This would be 4 plus or minus 16, and this would be positive 84 over 2. 4 plus or minus, that would be 100 over 2. Now, don't get mixed up and divide both these by 2, because this has a radical. So this, if you think about it, the square root of 100 would be 10. So you got plus or minus 10. So you have two things here. 4 plus 10 over 2 and 4 minus 10 over 2. That would be 14 over 2, which would be 7. And that would be negative 6 over 2, which would be negative 3. which are the same numbers I got, -3 and +7. So you can do it either way. Okay, so that would be your sketch. That's how you graph those. Now, what happens when it doesn't have x-intercepts, or I ask you to find something that wouldn't exist? Meaning, what if I said find where y equals -27? Well, y equals -27 down here, because this is -25. So if -27, let's say, is here, put my line too far down. What would be the x-coordinates if y equals -27? Well, if you think about it, this will never reach -27 because it doesn't dip down there. But this is how you would do that. What you would do is you would say, okay, well, if I wanted y to be -27, I'm going to put -27 for y and solve for x. So again, you can't solve these without setting them equal to 0, so I would add 27. Sorry about that. Add 27 to both sides, and I would get 0 equals x squared minus 4x plus 6. And then I'll set it equal to 0. Now I can try to factor here, but if you notice, x and x and then multiplies to get 6, it wouldn't give me this. So what happens there is the factoring doesn't work. And I told you factoring doesn't work all the time, but the quadratic formula will. So how do I solve it if it's set equal to 0? Is -b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So x equals -b in this case is -4 plus or minus square root -b squared, or b squared minus 4ac over 2 times 1. And what that becomes is a 4 plus or minus 16, and this is minus 24 over 2, which reduces to a -8. Now, if you recall, you can't take the square root of a negative number, so -8 doesn't have a real number. That means that there's not a number that makes this true, meaning when I put in -27 for y, and we knew this to begin with because of my sketch, there's nothing down here at -27. There's no ordered pair on this parabola. So this signifies that it does not exist. There's no ordered pair that would have -27 here. If you're trying to find the x-intercepts, it's the same thing. If I find the x-intercepts and I put 0 in there, and I do all this work and I get a negative under this radical, that means that the parabola does not have any x-intercepts. Okay, I want you to pause the video, do this one, and see if you get the right answer. I want to go over it now as well. First, find the vertex. A equals -1, B equals -12, and C equals -45. So here we go. Negative B, or -b, which is -12, over 2 times -1. This would be +12 over -2, which is -6. Okay, so -6 is the x-coordinate. I've got half of my vertex. Now plug it in. Be careful, this is negative, and the -6 is getting squared. So -6 squared is 36, but this negative's still on it. This would be 36 minus 45, which is -9. So the y-coordinate when x is -6 is -9. So there's my vertex. So far my vertex is over here, -6, -9. Okay. Alright, next is determine if it opens up or down. Look at your A value. Your A value is negative, so that means it opens down. So it would look like this. Right, next step is the Y-intercept. You put 0 in for x and solve for y. F of 0 would be -0 squared minus 12 times 0 minus 45, which would be 0 minus 0 minus 45, which is -45. So if my parabola goes on forever this way down here when it crosses, sorry, that's very crooked, that's my Y-intercept. Now let's find the X-intercepts. You put 0 in for y and solve for x. Well, if you notice, this doesn't have any Y-intercepts because it goes -6, -9, and goes down. So you should know what should happen here. First of all, you put 0 in for y and solve for x. So if I do this, I have 2x terms. You set it equal to 0. It's already set equal to 0. Now you try to factor this. But if you know that it doesn't touch the x-axis, you know that this would not factor because that's what happens when something doesn't exist or it's irrational. So we do this. X equals -b plus or minus. And then plug it in. -12 plus or minus. -12 squared minus 4, -1, -45. Ran out of room. 2 times -1. I don't trust my math on this one. So I'm going to put 12 plus or minus. That would be 144. And 4 times 45 would be 180. Negative, negative, negative would be minus 180. (144 minus 180) would be -36. And again, if I have negative under the radical, that means it does not exist. So there are no X-intercepts. That's how you graph quadratics.